All right, I was going to do a mic check if anybody's tuned in. I don't know if we see anyone online, Rebecca. We're able to get a thumbs up if they can hear. I'm assuming we're good. Okay, lovely. Well, first and foremost, I wanted to thank the City of Borger for allowing this opportunity to utilize their space, their new technology, in an attempt to reach as many people as we can surrounding the voter approval tax rate election. And there is a handout made available online. I'm going to try to stay on each side just to make the flipping back and forth as easy as possible. But of course, early voting has already started. It started Monday of last week, and it will continue through this Friday at 6 p.m., at which time early voting will end. And then Election Day on November 4th, Tuesday next week, it will run from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There are 5 different precinct locations. Of course, on election day, you have to go to the precinct that you're assigned to based off your residence. So we have placed a link on our social media page for the district. If you don't know which precinct is assigned to which voting location, you can go check that information. But I did want to cover, most importantly, as we arrive at the polls, in an effort to educate us on the ballot language itself. I do think that it's important that we recognize school finance is broken into 2 different areas. It's maintenance and operations, which is essentially your annual budget that we work within, and then interest and sinking, which is our debt, aka bonds that we pass. But the ballot language here on the document just is outlining maintenance and operations. So the first sentence on that ballot language is that it is a tax increase, and I wanted to provide some explanation for the community on this. So on that M&O side, it is an increase by definition because it's going up 5 cents. However, it does not explain in the ballot language that on the other side of the formula, we have the INS side, which we've taken and dropped just over 10 cents. So just further up on the page, it'll actually show you that it's actually netting out to a total tax rate decrease. This last school year, our rate was $1.8210, and with this initiative passing, we're proposing $1.2602. So we're actually netting out a decrease in total tax rate, but it does not reflect that in the ballot language because this ballot language is specific to the M&O side. So it does not discuss the INS side at all, but please know that this was an intentional attempt to try to have our community have some value in not only supporting this initiative, but also to have an opportunity to have some relief whenever it comes to school taxes within our community. At the top of the page, it's outlining that 5 cents that it talks about in the ballot language, it's going to be $561,000 of additional revenue of local money. So that's tax dollars. I think it's important to know that of that $561,000, if you look at the percentage of our tax base that comes from industry and business partners, 500,000 of that is going to be fielded by industry and business. The other 61,000 is essentially what is going to be covered by homeowners. Of course, if you own a home and your value is at $140,000 or less, there's a homestead exemption for that amount. So you essentially would be paying 0 in taxes for school taxes. However, you're paying for the difference, the homeowners, at $61,000, and it's targeted to homeowners making, or the values over $140,000 for their home. That being said, this mechanism, by us tossing in additional local funds, it does trigger a mechanism within state funding. It's going to cause the state of Texas to send our school district an additional $970,000 per year. And so while values can change a little here or there, this is generally what we're looking at each school year. It might rise a little, might decrease a little, but I'm expecting it to be within a pretty decent range. But this is additional state funding year after year after year. So the example is, if I take 970,000, after 5 years, that's almost 5 million additional state dollars in our community for our district to be able to utilize. On the other side of the document, it talks about the 5 categories. I've taken that amount. You take the local tax dollars plus the additional state dollars. It totals $1.531 million. And in these 5 categories, it accounts for every single dollar that would be utilized and allocated to these initiatives. The most important here, categories 1 through 5, category 1 hones in on early education. It talks about our daycare is currently operating at a deficit. We know that we operate in a daycare desert, and so there's definitely a need for our community. But we have recognized some opportunities with that. The first being is trying to get it brought into town, into the city limits, where more people can take advantage of that. And then we're also looking at trying to find a year-round solution that would offer it up to more than just education individuals within the school district. So that's something we're committed to looking into. Open enrollment pre-K. So right now, the way that the state funding mechanism works for pre-K is you have to qualify to get funding. And those that qualify only get half-day funding at that. So I'm going to use 100 students as an easy round number. It's pretty close to what we have in our situation. So if only half of those qualify, that means immediately we're getting funding for half of 100, but then those that qualified only got half-day funding. So really we're getting funding for about 25-ish kids, but we're serving 100. And so a lot of school districts, to offset that difference, they charge tuition to the tune of between $3,000 and $4,000 a year. And so ultimately this, by allocating $300,000 to pre-K, we would be able to continue to offer this to our community at no cost, and you would not have to qualify. It would be any student who meets pre-K age, they would be able to come in at no cost, and we continue to service all students. So it's definitely a value to our community. All the research supports the sooner we can get them in, the sooner we get them reading on grade level, the more successful they will be in all things that they do. The next item is category 2. It's looking at a homestead exemption. So earlier I alluded to $140,000 homestead exemption, but our district does even more than what it's required to do. And so it actually netted a lost revenue for us last year of $144,000 because it's above and beyond what's required. That being said, we would like to allocate that $144,000 to this so that we can keep that in place, because as values continue to increase, it's going to bring added value to our community. But we will stand firm and committed to allocating the $144,000 per year. Category 3, safety and security. It's looking at $75,000 for replacement of antiquated equipment. So you imagine the average life expectancy of door locking mechanisms and cameras and other types of safety features. The average life expectancy is 7 to 10 years, and many of our facilities are much, much older than that. So that $75,000 would be targeted just specifically to antiquated equipment. And then we have $50,000. So within the district, we have a safety security committee. It's made up of emergency officials around the county, the city, the school district, and they come up with different methodologies to help keep our kids safe in our schools, but there's currently no money allocated to them. So it's a state requirement to have it, but there's no tied funding to it. But this would allocate $50,000 per year so that we could do those creative things that they talk about that meet the local needs of our campuses and our students and our families, instead of just depending on the state to be able to provide for us. So that would also require a recommendation from the committee, and then that would require board approval. So for transparency purposes, it's not just a handful of people making a decision about these funds. It would be a committee of people recommending to the superintendent, and then me taking it to the school board as a recommendation. So it'd be vetted on multiple levels. Category 4, operations infrastructure. The best way to explain this is that on the INS side, bonds, they build schools. They do a great job building facilities. But then M&O, the maintenance and operations, designed to help keep it running. But there's not in the M&O budget room to be able to replace certain items that are beyond their life expectancies. The best example I can give is like an air conditioning unit. You build it, buildings are expected to last 50 years, you maintain it, and so belts break, compressors go out, we replace those things as needed, but what do you do whenever the entire unit needs to be replaced? And so a good example is Texana Gym. I'll use that as an example. We have 2 units. There are 2 30-ton units in that space. One of them has 2 compressors that have been out for 5 years. Compressors are highly expensive, but to replace that one unit is $53,000. And so a maintenance budget is not designed to field that type of expenditure. It's designed to keep it up and running with belts, motors, compressors, et cetera. So that's really what operations infrastructure is going to hone in on. It's $529,000 total. But there's allocations here for technology. So having an obsolescence schedule or a schedule to replace our old Chromebooks for students. Transportation. Right now, we have the majority of our fleet is 16 plus years old or older. And I'm actually in the process of a grant opens tomorrow. And I will commit myself to utilizing grant funds whenever I can. But they're highly targeted. So it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. But this would allocate money, $148,000 to transportation. So if we need to purchase a new bus, we're able to. If we need to replace white fleet vehicles, we can. If we would need to do maintenance trucks and trailers and mowers and things of that nature, these are the funds that we could work with to offset and replace those items. Roofing, $100,000. HVAC, $75,000, and then $25,000 apiece for fine arts and auditorium. I think that one's important because fine arts is an area that I don't want to say gets neglected, but it's obviously there's not a designated mechanism to draw money to. And so I'll use our auditorium at our high school as an example. We partner with Tri-City Concerts, and a lot of the equipment is not operable. And so they have to actually pay people to come in and actually put in a sound and lighting system so that they can operate. And I hate to say that while the space is beautiful and great, a lot of the innards or guts of the facility need replaced, such as a soundboard and lighting board. And that's stuff that can be focused in on those needs. We also have the band program, a good example. Last year, out of a dire need, the board made a budget amendment to purchase $40,000 worth of band equipment. And at $40,000 sounds like a lot of money. You're talking probably 6 instruments. You know, that being said, this would allocate $25,000 to band where they could intentionally every year start to begin replacing equipment that's needed intentionally. So it's not large purchases all the time. Instead, it's intentional, meaningful change within inventories of band. And the same goes for agriculture and athletics. So it's a well-diversified opportunity for us to put funds in a space that usually either the funds that they do get are highly, told how to spend, or this provides an opportunity to focus in on some capital layout assets of like $5,000 or more, where it's hard to run into that type of money all at one time to meet the needs. Category 5, this to me is one of the most important. Recruiting and retaining our teachers is huge. I'll tell you right now, our district operates with District of Innovation. Our goal is to try to get all certified, highly qualified teachers. But this essentially would allocate $220,000 for teachers. It would put a ongoing recruit and retain stipend in place where in December they would get $500. And then again in June they would get $500. And this would be ongoing year after year. It would help diversify our compensation plan in a way that will help recruit from districts around us, because a lot of times these don't happen unless they do a bond of some kind, unless they run into additional funding somehow, like during COVID, things of that nature. But this would really help us diversify our compensation plan for teachers. The other is $80,000. And so right now we have 6 pay categories in our district. And whenever you take teachers out, that leaves 5. You take out administration because that would not be included in this. The other 4 would be able to utilize this $80,000, similar setup and model as the teachers, where $40,000 would be expended in December, $40,000 in June. And that way so that we can diversify our compensation plan for all employees, of course, with the exception of administration. So that's the only category of employee. The hard thing to say is administration. People usually think of like my position. They think of principals. They think of APs or assistant principals. Roles that they don't think about are counselors, librarians, nurses. Like they're also on the administrative pay scale, so they would not be accessing these funds in Category 5. But as a district, we would be trying to find ways to also incentivize for them as well. But it'll be outside of the voter approval tax rate election. And so at this time, I wanted to just open the floor to any questions. We've had time to touch both sides of this. And I'd be happy to take or field any questions and offer some clarification.
Well, on the pre-K, do we really get all of the lunch applications for the free and reduced lunch that would qualify those pre-K kids? Do we get as many as we should? Do you require them to fill one out?
Right. So the good news for us is this year we went to what's called CEP, because there is that challenge of free reduced lunch. But with the CEP program, because we had enough direct certification students, so if you think about direct certification, it's they receive state aid, they're a foster child, there's a whole mechanism for direct certification. But because we had enough percentage of that, it allowed us that all kids in the district eat free. So it no longer depends on that application.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
So, but the goal for us now to break even is we need to increase participation at our cafeterias. But as it stands this year, no student is paying for lunches, no student is paying for breakfast.
But so pre-K students don't have to monetarily qualify
So
pre-K?
monetarily, they would have to qualify in one realm, but there's also other areas like military connectedness, correct.
ED. They added this year, if they're an employee of the district, they get pre-K for free.
Oh, good.
So they specifically, you have to be a certified teacher, we
Oh,
found
okay,
out.
not just a.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
But those types of items, but even at best, funding is half a day. So
Right.
that 100 number I used earlier, even if all of them qualified, you only get paid for 50 of them, right? And that's assuming all qualified. But that usually travels along the same lines as your eco-dis percentage, which for us is between 50-60%.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I didn't realize that us getting the grant took that off the table.
yeah, it's been really helpful. But for pre-K,
That's great.
for the purpose of lunch, they don't have to fill out the application, but for the purpose of qualifying for pre-K, they would still need to fill out
Okay.
some income items.
Okay.
And if you expanded the daycare into the community, not just school district employees, then those people who are not school district employees would have to pay some kind of rate for their.
Correct, yeah, and we would anticipate the rates would be what they are now for the daycare. I don't have those referenced here with me right now, but the idea would be is there's a break-even point for our daycare to break even, and that number is more between 50 and 60 kids. Last year, we serviced mid-20s. This year, we hit 30, but a lot of it is due to location and difficulty. It's not year-round, and so a lot of our other needs in our community are requiring year-round daycare. And that being said, I mean, even if we can move it into town, even if we can field it year-round, the next challenge would be facilities. I mean, I don't know that we have any space as a district now to field 100 kids, but at the same token, I do think that we can, find a way to get it into town. I think we can find a way to increase our numbers to that break-even point. But I think it's food for thought because the location right now and it not being year-round it creates so many challenges for people.
Is there a replacement on HVAC and roofs and equipment buses? Is there a replacement plan every year to buy so many
So
new
ju-
air conditioners.
So
and
just since I've been here, upon this passing, I've been in the process of doing needs assessments. So I've taken a master vehicle list. I have prioritized how old it is, what the repair cost is on them. So just like with the grant tomorrow, I've already identified 2 of our oldest, most in need buses that qualify for the grant, and I'm targeting those. And so this would be no different. I just had an entire district roofing assessment completed. They'll be presenting to our board in November of like, what's the current status of every roof in the district so that we can use these funds highly intentionally. So the same thing would apply for HVAC. We just did a energy optimization project over the summer. And so I'm waiting for that inventory list from that company to identify where the needs are. Texana Gym is one that services a lot of people in our community, and it running on half a leg there for 5 years is something we need to address. So Texana Gym would be something we address immediately. And there was already one split system unit we had to replace this year to the tune of $7,000+. So those are types of things that we would be highly intentional about replacing.
computers. Yeah, it's always a battle. It's always a
Absolutely.
challenge.
Maintaining is tough, but some of the big ticket items is really difficult without some form of dedicated, allocated funding. And what I love about this opportunity is it's not just for 1 year, it's going to be year after year after year. And the other thing I love about it is the community is going to be able to actually see the changes. Upon it passing, we'd be allocating every dollar in the budget to that category. And I'd be doing an annual impact document showing exactly what was bought that year with every dollar. And if there's any money not spent, then it'll be reported. And then it'll be intentionally spent as soon as possible type of thing. So there's going to be accountability with this. There's transparency with it. And there's intentionality with it. So I think with those 3 things, the community will have no choice but to see the value and benefit after this passes, because we've already got a list of things that we could execute using these funds. Have been any other questions come up on the social media?
What about the tax exemption? With the Proposition 11 was going to increase the homeowners for seniors from 140 to 200,000. Well, how will that impact?
That I'm unsure of, only because that's something they'd have to address in their funding mechanism for this. But whenever these come to vote, it'll be based on what laws in place at the time.
Right.
And then if there's any modifications to that, then the state will do a funding mechanism adjustment based off that new legislation. If there's no other questions, I encourage anyone that if you do have a question, my email address is daniel.fuller@borgerisd.net. I encourage you to reach out to my office, set up an appointment time. I don't care if I need to meet with 1, 10, or 100, however many there's a need to answer questions to, I will make myself available. Wherever you are, I can meet you where you are and be happy to try to expound more on what this voter approval tax rate election could do for our community. So I thank y'all so much for your time, for being here. I appreciate the platform. Again, City, thank you so much, City of Borger, for allowing us to utilize this facility. And thank y'all so much for being here. Y'all have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Very good.